Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is time to get started. My name is Leslie Wright, and I'm the Director of External Engagement here at Greater Twin Cities United Way. We are so happy to have you join us on this very warm day compared to yesterday to hear more about our food insecurity work. So before we get started with this awesome panel, I just want to make sure that we honor the native land that we're on. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge that these are the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of indigenous peoples. We are on Dakota lands in Minnesota, Makoche, land where the water reflects the sky or cloudy water. The water, trees, and all living things coming out of the ground carry with them the spirit of the Dakota people because quite literally, this ground is saturated with the DNA of the ancestors who lived here for millennia. The land was ceded from the Dakota in the treaties of 1837 and 1851, and we acknowledge the complex and multi-layered history that included violence and trauma. This land continues to hold great historical and spiritual significance and remains sacred for many people. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm tribal sovereignty, and the Greater Twin Cities United Way is committed to ongoing efforts to recognize, support, and advocate for sovereign tribal nations and indigenous peoples of the state of Minnesota and across the United States. So as I get started, I'm going to briefly let you know what this next hour is going to be about. You're going to really hear about United Way's vision of food insecurity. We have some lovely panelists that are going to talk to you today about this work and tie it together about United Way's role in this work. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, there she is, Saroon M. to you, who will be facilitating this conversation.
So before I begin our presentation, I just want to say that food insecurity, hunger, doesn't happen in a vacuum, or just that people are too poor to buy food, right? So it is caused by a series of historical events, from colonizations to genocide, to slavery, and also racist policies that resulted into various forms of trauma in relation to the inaccessibility and insecurity to food for many people. So recognizing that there are historical trauma attached to the work in food security today is very important. For example, displacements of Native people disconnected from their food and their food source is an example. And Frogtown is a neighborhood in Minnesota that was a thriving African-American neighborhood before the interstate of 94 came through, coupled with years of disinvestment in the community, caused people to lose their businesses and sense of community. So with that said, in the last 5 years, Minnesota food shelf visits have doubled to 3.4 million. 1 in 11 people at any given time are hungry, and 1 in 8 are children. And the current administration recently passed an executive order that will enforce or require people to be employed or get employment in order to receive Supplemental Nutritious Assistance Program, called SNAP benefits. This will impact approximately 700,000 households nationally. This hurts the family we serve, especially those that do not have access to good paying jobs, or jobs that do not pay enough for childcare, or where they live lack reliable public transportation if they do not have or afford their own means of transportation. Our data already shows us that there is a wealth gap between African American, Latinx, Native Americans, and white households. The table shows the correlation of what we already know. Who live in poverty experience food insecurity. And food insecurity is the experience where there are economic and social conditions where food is limited and or access is uncertain. It is also important to list out that all the culturally specific groups, including Asian Americans, particularly those who have cultural roots in Southeast Asia, it is important because one, each culturally specific group experiences food insecurity and income disparity differently. Secondly, data from culturally specific groups such as Asian Americans are often not presented because of the ethnic diversity of the group. Therefore, the need to further disaggregate our data because it gives us a better understanding and awareness that informs better program models, best practices, and policy agendas. What causes food insecurity? Most often, it is the reality of low wages and rising food costs. I would like us to invite to take a deeper look at the impact of low wages and rising food costs by reviewing the basic monthly expenses of a family of four in the Twin Cities. This is a monthly budget of $4,300, which reflects the $52,000 annual gross income of a family of four at 200% of the federal poverty threshold. I know that this shows an incredibly conservative monthly expenses of a family that does not take into consideration other expenses like after-school programs, school lunches, medical bills. This is also assuming that they are living paycheck to paycheck, which reflects on most of our families, and with very little savings as well. So this Twin Cities family is short of $830 a month. If this was your expense, what would you cut? If time is limited, right? The easiest thing is to cut food. And if food and diet was important to a family member's health, like having diabetes or heart disease, I've been asked to use the microphone. Heart disease, what decisions are you willing to make to recover the $300 so that you can feed, so you can have the diet that meets your health needs? It's challenging. These two slides show that food insecurity is a symptom of poverty as well as a cause of it. And that is why United Way is focused on ensuring everyone has access to healthy and culturally relevant food, as well as the wraparound services so that their needs around employment, education can be met, and that other resources like SNAP, MFIP, and energy assistance can be accessible. So this is how we think about doing our work. Our vision is that people and the community in Greater Twin Cities all thrive regardless of income, race, and place. Our vision is that we work with our community partners to identify the greatest needs and how we can work to disrupt the inequities that lead to those needs. We do that by focusing on the outcomes, centering equity that addresses economic opportunity, educational success, and household stability. We also use United Way's unique position in the community to do this through our grant making, our capacity building, impact measurement, and system change work. So at United Way, our vision for food security is where hunger is rare, brief, and non-recurring. Equitable outcomes are when there are fewer to none indications of food access problems or limitations. Our food security strategy focuses on 3 areas that are meant to support and strengthen community food systems work in a multi-strategy effort. First, we continue to invest in emergency food systems across the 9 county areas. We ensure that our community partners have wraparound services, so when someone comes through the door for food, we are ready to offer a holistic approach to one's well-being. 2, we invest in partnerships and community collaborations. We support community movements that are causing radical changes for a more just and equitable food system. And 3rd, each individual organizations and movements lead to a stronger food system that is healthy, equitable, and secure. So here are some of the examples of what that looked like. We received 7,380 calls through our 211 platform. that is related to food. And this is calling on where's a food shelf that I can access, help in buying food, or any meal programs. Majority of our community partners provide not only wraparound services, they also provide culturally specific food to the community they serve. And culturally specific food is important because it reflects or is an extension of our cultural identity, especially during the holidays. We have Christmas, Hanukkah, Tet, which is the Vietnamese New Year. The Lunar New Year is coming up soon. And so there are special dishes that we bring out just for those. And they take special ingredients. And the food brings us joy, and it feeds into the whole well-being of who we are. We uplift and support the partnerships of our community partners with other organizations that focus on urban farming to supply them with local, fresh produce. One of our community partners is Pillsbury United Community that have operated urban farms and just purchased a hydroponic farm, which is so cool. And it's located in North Branch Market, so if you have a chance, do your shopping there. And as well as our panelists, the organizations also have this unique partnership. And so I would like to warmly introduce you to Louise Matson, who is the Executive Director of our Division of Indian Work since 2014. She started with them in 2002 as the Youth Leadership Director. Louise was a founding board member, and is the current board chair of Badoti Learning Center, a Dakota and Ojibwe immersion school located in South Minneapolis. And Tia Williams is the co-director of Frogtown Neighborhood Association, and she calls Frogtown home her entire life. Displacement from Frogtown is becoming a very familiar story with many families, and one that Tia is deeply passionate about. Tia is dedicated to making sure the Frogtown community continues to be a place where historically under-resourced people can live and thrive. So please welcome. Okay, you didn't see that. Well, welcome, and I am so grateful. Is it on? Well, maybe we'll pass this mic around. Yeah? Okay. Well, I'm so grateful that you're both here. Please introduce yourself and share a little bit about your organization.
Well, I'm Louise Matson, Indigenous Kawa Baba Kinikag and Dunjaba, Makwan Dudam. So my name is Louise Matson, and I'm Bear Clan from the White Earth Nation. I'm the Executive Director at the Division of Indian Work, and we're one of the oldest social service agencies serving Native folks in Minneapolis. And our food shelf is the oldest program, started in 1952, that we still are continuing to this day. But we have 4 program areas, and I'm very excited to talk more about our food work today. Miigwech for having me.
Good afternoon. I'm Tia Williams. I'm co-director with Katie Royce at Frogtown Neighborhood Association. We're a district council. However, our name is Frogtown Neighborhood Association, or FNA. We are an incubator for many different projects and programs through Frogtown. To name a few is Frogtown Farms, WFNU, Frogtown Radio, Victoria Arts Theater, and also our food distribution that takes place every Friday called Feeding Frogtown.
Thank you. So you probably know that many people you serve experience the impact of income disparities, right? So where many families and individuals, how do they survive on the low or stagnant wages? Underscoring how difficult decisions family have to make, in particular giving up food. And how does the SNAP, the new executive order, impacts that? And so what do you see in your clients and the people that you serve had to compromise in their everyday schedule, everyday budget?
Well, I think we're going to see a huge demand rise in our food shelf because people will no longer have SNAP benefits, and so that is a concern for me. I know that the community will rise to the occasion and meet that need, but similar to the graph we looked at, like there's not a lot of wiggle room for people. So what they're going to do, they will cut back on food. rely more on food shelves. And also what I see our clients doing is they are in our community, they are not following up on health care, they don't have insurance, and they're visiting doctors only in the ER, so only when the situation is pretty chronic and bad. So that's pretty scary when people can't take care of their health, their children's health, but there's not a lot of room there. And that's what is the only thing that'll be cut. And it is, we talked, it's kind of like a domino or a house of cards, as many of you know. Like several things are balancing in place when you have limited incomes with your housing, your vehicle, your food, and when one thing goes or diminishes, everything else is impacted, and it could lead to greater impacts across all security. So for people that are already struggling in a community that always seems to be dealing with a lot of trauma, this is just it's terrible news, and it's shameful, I think, that we in our country are going to make people prove that they deserve food.
So I told Louise I felt like she was looking at my notes last night. She took a lot of my answers. Yeah, she's reading my paper. So I'm going to add on to what Louise has said, because when I thought about this last night, this is a very hard question, right? I thought about like the bias even of what people think or who people think are receiving SNAP benefits. And most of them look like me and Louise, and people of color that live in our communities. And that's not always the case. We also have elders that are benefiting from these programs as well. I think about what our vulnerable communities are going to be threatened with, because there are a lack of access to livable wage jobs, right? And then through my own experience, I think about like the gap. Once you do get a job, then you are pushed off of all your other support. So it is food that's going to be the last thing that you are attempting to take care of, and then what kind of food are you getting, right? I was thinking how my grandma used to send me to the store with $1. I'd come back with bread, cheese, and eggs. And that's not the way that this world is right now. And people, when you are getting the food that you're getting, it's usually unhealthy, but spreads far. And so that does seep into our mental health, and that's something that is very frustrating. And I think that we need to really think about, for governments attempting to save money, this is just not the place where we try to pull away from. I'm very scared for and concerned for our community.
Thank you. You talk about historical trauma. And so historical trauma refers to the complex and collective trauma experience over time and across generation by a group of people that share a similar identity and circumstances, right? So we know that both of your organizations address the trauma experience in your community through food at your food shelf. So can you share with us why this is a need and how historical trauma is connected to food security? What should we be aware of?
I got your notes. So again, I reflect a lot on our community, but our community reflects each other, right? My grandparents went through the Depression, and what they ended up doing is having all these different antidotes of how to save food. So we and I still to this day put my bread into the freezer, and I take it out one by one. I don't think I've had a fresh piece of bread in a long time. But these are things that people do in order to make sure that it is that we can, again, stretch food. At our food distribution, we're seeing that our community, first of all, is a welcoming community to newly immigrated communities. And we hear the stories of what trauma that they went through, and it goes from where they're coming from and back, here into our states, but also what they've done with food. I think about how it is that we have all these cans in our pantry, right? We all know canned goods are not good, but people live out of survival, and that's trauma. We've had instances at our food distribution where there was a fight over a barrel of apples. Now there's a request that you take 5 to 10 of them, but there's a woman that wanted all of those apples. And how do you really address that type of trauma? And how do you address the trauma from a woman who it is that wanted the potatoes and ran down the street with the potatoes because she was taking too many? These are things I think that are generational. Like I said, when I was growing up, we have our elders who it is that taught us how to cook and survive and keep food. But how we are attempting to do something about this is working with a whole community. Frogtown is one of the most diverse communities in Minnesota, and who you described as Rondo, but that's our sister neighborhood. So, but Frogtown is one of the most diverse neighborhoods in Minnesota, and there's so many beautiful cultures that are there, learning from one another, teaching one another, recipes that they're sharing with one another. And sometimes it's not even a space that we have to create. It's created in the space of the food distribution. When people are standing in lines, some people did not know what an eggplant is and how do you cook it, right? So those are ways that it is that it's very genuine. It's grassroots of how people are even learning about our new foods, or new foods that are new to them, actually. But also, what we'd like to do also is canning. Teaching people how to can goods, and so these are different ways of being able to try to exit with the child, escape trauma.
Well, for the American Indian community, we have been separated for a long time from traditional food and from access to traditional food. So Division of Indian Work is located on Lake Street, so Phillips and Powderhorn in South Minneapolis. It's kind of the heart of Indian country in the urban areas. And so a lot of my communities like me, like I've never lived on my reservation. I've always lived in South Minneapolis. I'm never going to live on my reservation. I'll probably be here. And so all those traditional foods that we would eat and harvest are not accessible to me and to the community. And if they are, they're expensive. So things like wild rice, venison, walleye, all the different plants that, I don't know what they are actually. What did we use for our medicines? How did we treat ourselves in that way? Food is medicine. And if you look at historical trauma for Native folks, being separated from the land and boarding schools, and also what we were given to eat on our reservations is commodity food. It's processed food. So it's that kind of that block of Velveeta cheese. It melts really nice, but it's not healthy for you. And peanut butter. And so we saw things in the 60s like diabetes and things that were never something we had in the community. High rates of obesity and heart disease. And so all these things are directly related to a diet. And I say we see a lot of that now. The Native community is a lot like the canary in the coal mine, ate that way because we had to, but now a lot of people are choosing to eat more processed foods, and myself included, because it's easier, it's cheaper, and we see more of those impacts in the larger community. Again, food is medicine, but we're going to eat what's accessible, what's affordable. It's not necessarily going to be fresh. So we have a lot of different things in place to combat that. And it's not as easy as, hey, start gardening in your backyard, because a lot of our land in our neighborhoods, it's poisoned. It's polluted with arsenic and lead. So, it's not as simple as let's start growing food again. But there's a lot of work, and I'll talk about that later, to address that's really exciting in the community to kind of say, well, that's a challenge, but this is what we're going to do about it.
Yeah.
No, I said I just want to add.
You want to? Oh, yeah. We'll add. So yes, Rondo. Thank you for correcting me. In Frogtown, I used to live in Frogtown as well. So thanks. Both of your organizations offer unique services, right, that dismantle food inequities. For example, in Frogtown Neighborhood Association uses community assets to address these inequities. Can you share with us how you changed the culture and perception of food shelves? Because many people sometimes just think food shelf is just a place to pick up food, right?
So our food distribution is a weekly pop-up. So that means through our partnership with St. Paul City Schools, the team goes in and they put all of the stuff together, and then after it's finished, they break it all down, and you never knew they were even there, right? But within that space, there's also a lot of art that goes on, some music. When you think about food shelves, you also think about how people feel very embarrassed and ashamed to be there, whereas what we're attempting to do at Frogtown Distribution, or Feeding Frogtown, apologies, is to make sure that people feel welcomed and they feel the sense of community. In some senses they are. There are people who look out for one another and want to know why didn't so-and-so show up last week, right? And so instead of having the very large application process as well, we ask people for zip codes and how many people are in your household. There's not, personally, I think Frogtown would stand behind me when you say that you don't have to be scrutinized to figure out if you need food. And so I think that that's something that takes away the dehumanization of what food shelves could do. There are plenty of different partnerships, such as Juxta, that's come out and done art within the lines, like while the lines while community is standing in line. And they were surveying about jobs, but they brought art and bubbles, and we've had some of the youth come and do dances in the lines. We've had community that's played guitars and sing, and so it feels like a more welcoming space and more like a community instead of somewhere that you hang your head and go through.
Thank you. And Louise, you can add to that question as well, but I'm interested in learning, to share with the group what are some of the wraparound services that are available that is uniquely important to the American Native Indian community. How are they sometimes misunderstood, which in turn can lead to their being underfunded?
Well, similar to what Tia was saying, so for our food shelf, we have a lot of other things going on where it's located in our building on Lake Street. It's one of, I mentioned, 4 program areas, so it's in health services, but we have a off-site, we have a foster care home for boys, and we also have a home for teen moms right next door, so they can come and access the services. But within the building, we're serving that whole family that's coming to the food shelf. They can have their youth come to our out-of-school time programs, either at DIW or during the summer. They can attend if they need domestic violence counseling or anger management counseling. They can come to our Women of Traditional Birthing class. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to do different activities and things at DIW. And we're a small community, so these are, we say they're all our relatives. Literally, they are like our relatives and folks that we know, and we know each other a long time, and we can help each other. And often in our food shelf, we'll bring in people to table, like we just did yesterday, rapid HIV testing. And we'll have Indian Health Board or NAC come in. We also partnered with the American Heart Association. We have a blood pressure kiosk in the food shelf. It's one of 2 in the state. So people can just check their, monitor. It's just to be knowing what their blood pressure is. But as far as, so being in this environment that's culturally specific is so important, because most of the time our community is 1% to 2% of the population are always maybe the only Native in the room. And in school, at work, in the community, out and about, always the only one. So for someone to walk into a place and be in a program that's them, that's their community, that there's their art, their music, their smells, there were smudging, there's our medicines, that you're in a group of people that are like you is so much. It's everything, instead of being the only one. And then we're able to provide things like language, like right now we're teaching Dakota, because I have someone that can teach it. I don't have a funding for that, but because it's so important and people want that. And I think the challenge is so these are activities done by the community for the community. And when people don't value that and funders don't value that, they're giving money to an agency to do that work in our community. And not to disparage that agency, because there's plenty of agencies doing good work, but it's not the same thing. And so if there's not a value to that, we're seeing people getting funded to work with our youth in foster care. I brought this up before at different meetings with United Way, that this latest round of funding that we saw for foster care youth didn't go to any Native organizations in the entire state, and did not go to any communities of color in the entire state, and were overrepresented in the foster care system. And it's not the same thing for those youth to go to a program where they have maybe a Native staff person, as opposed to they're walking into a Native supportive environment. So there's a big, huge difference. And so that's when we see the funding might not come to our organization despite having a successful program. It might go to a larger agency, maybe put up better numbers than me as far as larger populations. I can't compete against that. So, but that's what we offer, and it's really valuable, and it's very necessary.
Thank you. My next question is, how has your partnership with Greater Twin Cities United Way supported your respective approaches?
I'd say that, well, I have a little story of how it helped. So we, like I said, Frogtown is one of the most diverse communities. We had been attempting to connect with the Karen community. They live at the Como Place Apartments, and I've been working at Frogtown for maybe 6 years now, and we have tried to attempt this many, many, many times. We use our grant in order for us to have satellites. So we take food, hyper fresh local vegetables from Frogtown Farms. They go to the distribution, but they also go to 2 other spaces, and one of those is Tacoma Place Apartments. The other is to Wilder Square Cooperative, which is the last Black and Brown owned cooperative in Minnesota. And we're able to connect with the community through this. One of the things that came out, and I'm just sorry, I can't stop smiling, but we have a youth that live there at the Como Place Apartments, who has been now, is on our board. We have 2 board seats that are for youth, but she's on our board, and she's coming ready to organize. But we're able now to connect to a community that we don't speak the same language with. And that's very critical to what's happening within our community, is that we have to be able to communicate with one another, right? One of the great things that happened out of that is that they let us know that they had no clothes for the winter. And if you're from here, you better have clothes for Minnesota winter, right? The community came through and supported us by donating so many clothes, kids' clothes, adult, hats, gloves, everything, and we took that back to that distribution. So that connection to what's happening with our newly immigrated communities, we're connected to them to be able to really support one another, because we need to hear about their story, we need to learn about their culture, because they are a part of our community, right? And so that's one of the great stories that I have. But the partnership also, to me, extends into when we are we're convening with the other partners from United Way and learning from one another. I would love to see how we can get a blood pressure check at Frogtown Neighborhood Association, and creating ideas. It's like a think tank, so we're able to really broadly support one another and also learn from one another.
I would say with our partnership with United Way, it's relationships, 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 and that's everything, especially in my community. It's all about relationships, and we've had a really long-term relationship with United Way over the years. I mean, I've been at BIW since 2002. I came to direct the youth programs and a teacher by training, and we had United Way funding back then, and I got to know all my grant managers, and they would come regularly and do site visits, which is not something that often a grant funder will do, and we're invited to a lot of activities. We're making connections with other folks. So to me, that's the most important thing. And I know, and we all know how the funding has changed and up and down, but United Way has been pretty steadfast in supporting our kids and supporting our food in our community. So in the 17 years that I've been there, it's been a constant, and that's not always the case in the funding world. And so it's nice to have that reliability, since we seem to react to funding all the time, or more funding or lack of funding or changes. And so that's really nice. But then I also appreciate I'm a part of a capacity building cohort, and we meet regularly, and it's just been invaluable to me because I'm fairly new in my position as an executive director, and it's been a huge learning curve for me. So to have other people that I can ask for help it's invaluable, and ask for advice. So I think it's the relationship piece that's really important.
I should just said that.
Relationship.
Well, thank you for that. And I just want to close our conversation, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Is that what brings you hope in doing food security work?
So I'm pretty excited. In Minneapolis, I'm part of the Indigenous Food Network, and so that's under the umbrella of Dream of Wild Health. So we're talking about farming. That's a farm out in Hugo, and it's an awesome organization. And they've really organized a lot of work that's going on in the community. Like most of us are trying to bring healthy foods in. Also, it's not enough to bring them in, kind of like Tia mentioned, like we have to cook with it. Like nobody's going to take kale unless you show people how to prepare it nicely. Because if they take it and they try it, they're going to be like, no, I'm not eating that ever again. So because we're showing people, teaching people what they almost forgot or what they weren't taught, like you don't open up that can of corn, or that carrot came out of the ground. Literally, I remember Joe Rice at Center School and another person in the Indigenous Food Network, like his kids, where they were harvesting or taking out some corn, they were like, oh, that's dirty, and it came from the ground. He's like, that's where it comes from, the ground. We'll wash it. But, and so part of what we did, and we just hired a nutrition coordinator at DIW, a man named Austin Bartold, who's really well known in the community. He's one of the first chefs cooking indigenously, like you've heard the sous chef. Like it's a huge movement in the community. So we're not serving that kind of food, or we're trying to get away from that. It's like we get a little bit of a pushback though, because it's not pizza, and it's not, but it's bison, and it's wild rice soup, and it's squash, and we're going to eat healthier, and we're going to try to serve healthier food. Like we can access our dollars to serve healthier food in our food shelf. Like I said, I want to serve more of that, but it's just pricey. It's pricey. So, and having partners that'll come and do a garden, free farmers market outside of the food shelf every Wednesday, and people, and cooking demos. So there's a lot of exciting work, and a lot of people are partnering together to kind of change the way we're eating right now.
You just made me hungry. That's great. So it's most definitely one of the hopes that I think we have with Frogtown is getting out there to the community and then talking to them about what vegetables that they want to see for the next season to start gardening. Building relationships with the gardens that are there in Frogtown for it to be able to supply some of that food distribution that we have. But the canning and the recipe sharing and the stories that it is that you're going to hear, like I'm looking forward to it. It's just a lot of, I feel like we do relationships all the time, but it's the storytelling that starts building those relationships, and we start to see how it is that we are not separate from one another. A lot of the trauma that we are going through, it's different. I mean, it's the same. It's similar, but it's not the same. But we are most definitely as a community working together and to work, like what else is my hope? I think just with the greatness that this food distribution can become in a space where it is, I feel like they wanted to call it a pantry party or Frogtown party, and that's what it feels like. It feels like you're coming to celebrate with one another. And just, the partnerships, I think that it is that as we're getting more well-known for what it is that we're doing, a lot of people are calling and wondering if they can come in and do their art there, or if they can partner with us, to teach people about certain foods, cook up different vegetables to let the residents taste. So it's just, I don't know if I can express the hopes, but it comes along them veins.
Soil testing parties.
Right. We haven't got to that one.
Oh, yeah. So we'll take questions. My question is two-part. One is,
Some of the gardening groups do work on raised beds. And so I think because the soil, we do live along a very busy corridor, so a lot of the emission system, I feel like, gets onto our soils. So we do have raised beds where there are many groups that are gardening. And then, we have like the support from Frogtown Farms. That's one of the very large urban gardens in Frogtown, and we do work a lot with them.
I think, and you should get your land tested and then keep testing it, because even if you remove it and you treat it, it kind of oozes back in there. I think they've seen that at center school, so it's a concern, because a lot of in our cities, that's where a lot of industrial activity happen. But yeah, we do raised beds, and then we do, test and do some gardening. I think another challenge for us right now too is because, our communities are impacted by opioids right now, and so a lot of what we have to check for in our gardening, and when we're out there with the kids, especially after a weekend, is check for needles, check for that, so it's safe, unfortunately. But yeah, we have raised beds. We have 4 beds behind our house, our Ampawashte house. And then hydroponics, I've heard of it. Yeah. And people are looking at, I think some of our partners are further along in the Food Network. None of us are doing it yet, but we're intrigued by it. And then we get a lot of support from different foundations. For example, we just got Medica just funded us about $5,000 specifically to buy culturally specific food. So Austin just bought like 90 pounds of wild rice and bison, so we do get support like that from folks.
Hydroponic, I would like to invite my Pillsbury United community, if you would like to say something. Ethan, yes.
Put me on the spot. Does it work? Okay. Thank you, I guess. So we manage one of the 2 freight farms in the state of Minnesota, with Second Harvest having the other one. So our hydroponic farm is over at North Market in North Minneapolis right now. The cool thing about it, so it's an outfitted tractor trailer that does indoor vertical hydroponic growing. In that trailer, it's equal to 1.5 acres of outdoor growing space. So that's a football field and a half, so end zone to end zone, plus another half, all inside this container. And with that, we only use 5 gallons of water a week. So that's about 3 toilet bowl flushes. Be able to produce from seed to harvest 7 to 9 weeks, so we even have a sped up process. So that's something that we're really looking at and selling into North Market so we can have more affordable produce in North Minneapolis. The rest of it's used in our community cafes, which Austin used to actually be our chef over at the White House. So I love Austin. Thanks for bringing him back. I know, I'm glad he's back. I was over with him at the Indian Center not too long ago, actually. So that's all great, and then the rest goes into our food shelf. So it's been a really fun, exciting project that we've partnered with Cargill and Pentair on.
Thank you, Ethan. Another question?
I'll lob a softball to you all. First of all, thank you for being here. I'm curious if you would just share a bit about how your relationship with the Greater Twin Cities United Way may vary from other funders.
Well, I think I mentioned before, I think that our grant managers come out and visit with us, and visit with, and most importantly, the clients, the kids. It's amazing to me that we do have some, like an application or even funders that don't come and see what's going on, but also just regular communication, connections, resources. I'm always getting emails. I'm always getting, this is going on. There's a council of agency executives that was recently formed. So there's just a lot of resources that are provided beyond just, here's your grant money and I want that report from you. It's just kind of ongoing regular communication and support is, in short, it's amazing. It's not always the case. Or we'll have some funders that I haven't seen my grant manager in a while, but I'm I'm still grateful for them. They're still supportive, but it's different. It's different if you don't come out and meet people face to face and then talk to the people that are at the agency.
It feels like a true partnership. Like, I don't hear funders ask, what can we do better, ever? And I think at most of our meetings, that's a question that's posed by United Way. What can we do better? What do you want to hear? What topic do you want to talk about? I don't hear that from other funders. And I will, again, reiterate, it's very important to me, and I think our organization, to be able to reach out to other organizations. And so we are with one another and growing with one another and talking. I think that every one of the grantees bring a large perspective of what's happening within our housing, food, and education systems. And there was some time, I think last week, that Katie was talking about like how the work is always divided, but what we know is that it all intersects. And so I feel like this is a space where it is that we can have that conversation of how, education and housing really do go together. We can't really separate those things. And I truly appreciate those conversations. They're hard conversations. Sometimes you feel very uncomfortable, but you need to feel that uncomfortability in order to do some type of growth within yourself and in your organizations.
Any questions on this side of the room or back there? Scott?
Hi, thanks. You started at the beginning by talking about the way that the SNAP changes are going to affect your work, and I'm just curious, more broadly, outside of your own programs, if you could kind of like, if there was a change that you could make in a state law or in a bigger system change that would ease some of the burden and some of the demand for your services, or just make life easier. Is there something like that that you've kind of pushed for, or you would love to kind of see beyond your own programs?
I don't know exactly which state law that I would. I got that, miss? Oh. The rose for you. Okay. I don't know exactly what state law. I think what I would like to have changed or reflected within a lot of the laws is that when you're creating solutions, I guess, like taking away SNAP benefits, you actually are you're attempting to put a blanket on an issue or a problem, right? And we're not really talking about the root issue of being poverty. And I think that that's what I would add into the conversations. We don't talk about race or racism, rather. We talk about race. We don't talk about racism and how it plays into a lot of the different policies that it is that are impacting our communities.
Well, I think there's a law right now in the books that needs to be changed, that it's still illegal for Dakota people to live in Minnesota after the War of 1862. So it's one of those, they put in the paper every once in a while, one of these laws that they don't really enforce but still in the book. So there's that kind of overall issue. But if I think not necessarily a law but policy, I think is I want to see the state give priority funding to American Indian people. Because, it's not good enough just to fund one or two or one program here and then back off here. If we're truly serious about eliminating the disparities, and we have some of the greatest disparities of any group, we need to put more resources towards that. So I think that in the Native community we do a really good job of partnering in Minneapolis, but we do have to compete with each other for funding. And it shouldn't be that the Indian Center gets their grant funded 1 year and then I get a grant, like 5 to 10 years, then we'll fund something else. Or the recognition that tribes deserve money and the reservations, they really do deserve funding, but you need to fund urban American Indians. So I think there's this lack of understanding that if you fund up at Red Lake, you're serving Indian people in Minnesota. And yes, you are, but you are missing 70 to 80% of the people that are living in the urban areas. So there's I think it's more of an educational piece, maybe on the decision makers who are making the funding decisions and the laws, like recognizing these things, or we're not all getting rich off casinos. There's also that feeling that, maybe Native people should be solving their own problems with their casino money, and that's not true. Most of us are not. And most of us in the urban areas are not getting funding from our tribes. They've got their own focuses on their reservations, and I don't think that should change even. It's just different. So I think it's almost more of an educational piece about that, around, making the invisible visible.
I can.
So listening to the two of you, it sounds very obvious that you're both very in touch and in tune with the communities that you're serving. I'm very curious about any formal structures you have or how you go about incorporating the feedback from your community. Is that just all just straight relationships, or do you have a committee? I'd love to hear how you're doing that.
So internally, whenever we do a lot of surveys with our parents, our youth, our customers. A lot of just I try to be careful about that because we tend to over-survey in our community. Like sometimes can't we do something without making a survey after we're done, right? But I do want to know, and I do read, we do them, and we do use some tools, like for United Way, we use a tool, it's a teacher observation tool. So we're trying to monitor how we're doing, that's particular with the youth, and setting goals around that. And then we have, with the board of directors, we do strategic planning with community input, periodically at DIW. And then in the Indian community in Minneapolis, we have the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors group, which is a group with an MOU with the city of Minneapolis. And that's it's exactly what it sounds like. It's directors of Indian organizations, and often will discuss things. People come there and might present something, talk about some issue, or like when they were working on the park at Bedamakaska, the park board came and showed the plans and got input from the community. And we do a lot of community events, like we did World Cafe meetings around the opioid crisis a couple years ago, where we're actually meeting in community, like what do we think is going to work in addressing the opioid issues, and asking for community input. And most of these meetings, like the MUD meetings every month, it's open to the public. People come. They're always welcome at the table to discuss things. And there's different branches of MUD that do work. The Dorte Learning Center, which is the Dakota and Ojibwe Immersion School, it's in its 6th year. That came out of the education working group of MUD.
Oh, sorry. So we have quite a few different access points to talk with community. One of them being our forum. We have a community forum every 4th Tuesday of the month, where it is that we incorporate lots of food. We have a massage therapist that's there, and we also have different topics of things that are happening. We have, Facebook. We use a lot of social media to keep in contact with our community, and most of them know where we are. So a lot of them are in our offices at any point in time. But yeah, it's mainly through working with having community does find ways of contacting you, and then we're always out in the field talking with many other community members. We have different type of projects that we're working on, and so these conversations always incorporate all of the different barriers that it is that community are going through. We have anti-displacement organizers who keep their ear to the ground, and so yeah, we have a lot of different access points, but we do know that that's also something that we'd like to continue to work on, is how do you get promoted to the community, right? I'm always thinking the biggest thing, can we get someone to fly through the sky, something huge, so we can let everyone know what we're doing. I feel like that's one of the issues, is trying to get almost 4,000 voices, and then also trying to let people know exactly what we're doing.
I
forgot to mention too that it's an exciting new project that is happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul is forming an elder advisory council. Some agencies have one, like Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center has one. I would love to have one at Division of Indian Work, but this might be a nice solution for all of us. And it's just in the beginning stages of talking about it, but to have that, then the elders are important in the Native community to have a advisory group, I think will be very helpful and a good thing.
And Tia, you mentioned earlier that community members are board members as well. And so that representation is very, very important, right? Well, that wraps up our last question. And so thank you so much for the insightful conversation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was tasked to jot down 3 things to highlight today. And those that know me know that I have a difficult time narrowing down things that are important to me. But here's some ways that I connected the dots today. Grant making is just one way that United Way assists in solving our food insecurity issues by supporting our emergency food shelves, partnering in community solutions and coalitions, and really making sure that our ears are to the ground on what happens. Another thing, culturally specific food shelves are very important for a multitude of reasons, and also it gives you that self-wealth and worth for what we need. We partner with organizations at United Way that are doing unique programs in the communities that they live in. Sometimes a little untraditional, but they work. And to help solve problems with them, especially those wraparound services that are needed, are really, really, really critical. And lastly, I just wrote this down at the end. It's always surprising to me and many people that are participating in food secure opportunities have jobs. So that first screen that was gone over about what would you take out, that is someone, so this is key, that had a job and that might have to think about where their next meal comes from. So in closing, because they're giving me the wraparound. In closing, 2019 was a monumental year for us with our community insight sessions. So we've covered just about all of our portfolio areas, but stay tuned. In 2020, these will continue. And we're going to change the name to Community Connection Series. So our first Community Connection Series is going to be on February 20th, and we're going to talk about our early childhood education work, more food to follow. We're going to talk about our full lives work and other really, really cool initiatives that we have. So please look out for the invites for our Community Connection Series. Don't think they're an additional meeting that we want you to come to. In terms of what I want you to take from this, really look at the advocating piece. We need you to advocate for some of these things that you learned about today. We need you to participate in trying to help them, and we need you to donate, because we could not do that without you. I want to specifically thank Tia and Louise for working with us today. We can be a little, can you, please? So thank you so very much for that, and thank you, Saroon, for all of the hard work that you did. And then, not more importantly, just as importantly, thank you all for being in the room today to help us learn and work in this very difficult space. Have an awesome holiday season and day.